That's right. You're listening to another episode of the Co-Main Event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for nearly the last 13 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Ben, we are back after a week off during spring break last week. Congratulations to all who celebrate. You and I were both out of town. I was down in Florida. You were overseas in Paris. And before we started recording, I noted with some surprise that you made it back.
Yep.
Could you regale us with some tales, some brief tales, because we got a lot to cover this week?
Went over there. I drank them French Pacificos, which is to say a bunch of beers that seem to come from a variety of monasteries in Belgium. But I will say, you want to hear one of the funniest things that happened to me while I was in Paris. So, you know me, I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to read some books before I go. I read a very interesting book about just sort of the history of Paris called The 7 Ages of Paris. It was full of fascinating historical information. Paris, by the way, a great city. I see now why they won't shut up about it, Chad. They've got a great city over there.
Okay.
It's just wonderful. You'll walk around there. It's like New York, but better. It's like New York with 3 times as much history and a lot fewer rats and a better, cleaner subway system. So I love what they got going on over there. But I was reading these books, reading various guidebook also type stuff, and everybody made me to understand, even if you don't speak French, which I do not at all, they appreciate it if you try a little bit. If you roll up in there and you're like, bonjour, and you're not rolling up in there like, English, motherfucker, do you speak it? You can do that in Amsterdam. You can do that in Belgium. They all speak it. They're accustomed to speaking it. They clock you as a North American of some variety just by looking at you. So they're ready for that. In France, they want you to speak it a little bit. One of the things in this guidebook, they were like, okay, you've had a meal, you've had some drinks, whatever, you're ready to pay the bill and get out of there. You know how it is, had the European style. They're not just going to bring you the bill. They feel like that's rude, like they're hustling you out of there. You got to specifically ask for them to bring it over. And they're like, okay, in French and in France, the way you ask for it is just you say, l'addition, s'il vous plaît,
Okay, that sounds
the
pretty good to me.
yeah,
That's
like the addition, adding up all the stuff that you drank and ate and bring it over here. We'll pay for it. We'll get out of here. The first time I tried to use it, I'm sitting outside a cafe in Montmartre. That one's still
okay.
tough for me.
That's a little less convincing.
It's tough. It's tough. That one's a tough one. But it's a great area, this little hilly area of Paris. Went to the cemetery out there, walked around, sat there with my girlfriend, had some drinks, everything, had a nice time talking to this waiter a little bit back and forth. And then I try to go, I try to ask for l'addition. Chad, this man looked at me right in my eyes, and he said, "What?" Just like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was just like, "Oh man, I'm doing the best I can." You know what the fuck I mean? Why? But I had to respect it in a way.
Mhm.
I had to respect what he was doing there. I will say, it helps to have the CME listening community all over the world. Because not
Yeah.
only did I get to hang out with longtime listener and friend of the show, Max DeVries out there, who lives out there in Amsterdam, took us to a great place, introduced me to the orange wine that they will drink, and also did the thing where it's like, I don't have to talk to the waiter. He's going to talk to the waiter and order all the right stuff, and I'm just going to sit there and eat it all. And then he's going to take us to a place for espresso martinis afterwards.
Hmm.
Had a great time. Also, though, got some recommendations from the big homie Luc Etiard Roulon Lafon. Rouillard Lafon. There's a lot of, Luke knows he has a lot of names. He told me about this place. He was like, this is where you want to go for the authentic French brasserie experience. I knew he was right because when I walked in there, I looked at the menu and I didn't understand shit on it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the other menus where they got the thing and then in English they got underneath after. It was just all in French. The waiter was like, came over, started speaking French. When he realized we didn't speak it, he was like, "Do I need to get the English menu?" And we were like, "No, man, by now we've been sitting here long enough that I put enough of this shit into my translator app. I figured it out." Had the best meal that we had the entire time we were in Europe. So Thanks. This is the reason right here why you do a mixed martial arts podcast. So you get to know people all over the world that can give you good recommendations for places to eat when you go there.
Yeah.
That's the reason right there.
It didn't even cause an international incident.
I tell you, I was a little worried. I was like, when I'm coming back to the U.S., are they going to go through my phone and look for Trump criticisms? Because, Chad, they will find some.
Yeah,
They will find some up in there.
They don't got to look through your phone. They just have to follow you on the social medias, and they'll know.
Yeah.
They'll know everything you got. Secret police will have you busted.
You look tanned after your trip to Florida.
I got a little sun down there.
Yeah.
We did boats, beaches, ball games. We had it all down there. I'll tell you what we did.
A picture of you drinking a beer. You were like, "There I am drinking a beer on a boat," and I was like, "I can see that boat is pulled up to the shore. I can see shoreline in the background. Chad's trying to make it act like he's out there on the high seas in this boat. I can see that boat is docked."
Well, yeah, we took a boat to a beach, and then we beached the boat on the beach, and I took the opportunity to climb up to the second level of the boat and drink one of them Florida Pacificos, and I thought I would take the opportunity to send you a pic, and of course I received nothing but mockery.
As Chad's over there like, okay, now that the boat has stopped moving, somebody get a pic of me drinking these Pacificos.
Well, you're not allowed to go up top while the boat's moving. I wanted to be up top side, so you could get the full effect.
That's it. Why you ought to be allowed to go up there.
I know.
I took one of those river cruises when I was in Paris. So at night you can stroll by all the stuff, but they pull you right up to the Eiffel Tower right as the shit is sparkling. The sparkles at the top of the hour for a couple minutes there. And
does it? Wow.
Yeah. You didn't even know that, you American rube. But there's this 2 level of this boat. There's people who are down there in the like lower level and you're just like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your one wild, precious life that you bought a tour? You bought this river cruise tour at night, and you are going to stay down. What, you cold? You're cold, so you're going to stay down there, and the shit is sparkling up here. What are you doing? And it wasn't because they couldn't find seats. I saw people getting on there among the first people, and they're taking seats on the inside, and I was just like, this is shameful. This is shameful what you're doing.
Yeah, you got to be out in the elements where you can take in Paris via the river cruise.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what we did. My wife and I like to go to a spring training game when we're down there. Her family lives in Naples. There's spring training facilities right there. I did not even realize that this is what we did until we were pulling into the parking lot of JetBlue Stadium, and I realized, oh shit, we are going to see the Boston Red Sox play on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There was a lot of people feeling very, very Irish in that stadium that day. Listen to a lot of bagpipe music, Dropkick Murphys on heavy rotation during the game. Whew, it was really something.
It has become, it seems, a tradition for you to go to a spring break baseball game and get a picture of yourself with a mascot.
Well, this was the first time. I told you the story last time I went, how Wally the Green Monster, the mascot of the Boston Red Sox, big-timed me.
That's right. He wouldn't give you a picture. That's what it was. Okay.
Because I saw Wally coming down the causeway there, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get a picture with Wally. And I was like, hey, Wally, can we get a picture? This motherfucking mascot, this giant green M&M-looking motherfucker, he looks at me, and then he taps his wrist in the international gesture for I'm too busy, I don't have time.
I ain't got time. He taps his wrist at the spot where a wristwatch might be if he were not a professional sports mascot who do not, of course, wear wristwatches as a rule.
So that was like 2 years ago. So I had basically sworn an oath to the sun and the moon.
You had unfinished business.
Exactly. I was like, next time I see Wally, I'm getting that pic. So again, my wife and I are hanging out down there in the, you know what they got down there is they have a replica of Fenway Park. That's where the Red Sox play their spring training games, is just in like an exact replica, not as much seating, but an exact replica of Fenway Park. They got the green monster there in left and everything, which makes sense, I guess, right? You're going to go play your regular season games at Fenway, you want to get ready. You want to play your spring training games at Fenway.
Well, yeah, don't you think that's for you? That's for the ticket buyers more than it is for the players getting ready to play Fenway. Don't you
Well,
think?
it's working. We're down there in the bowels of mini Fenway, and here comes Wally. We're down there. We're drinking the Fenway Park Pacificos, and I'm like, oh, here he comes. So I run over there, have to wait for Wally to take his picture with numerous children, obviously.
Yeah, that's probably how that goes.
Those are the people who are getting their pictures taken with Wally. And there was a moment where I was like, he's going to do it again. He's getting mobbed by these kids. He's going to do it again. He's going to give me the watch sign and he's going to bounce. But I got him. I corralled him. My wife took a picture of us. It's backlit. It's not a great pic, but it's not like you can be like, Wally, let's stand over here instead.
Yeah,
you know what?
get a
He's
better
got
one.
places to go. He's going to tap the wristwatch and walk
Mhm.
off if you try to get him in a different location. So I felt good. My oath was fulfilled and we had a nice time.
I would say my sports experience on my vacation was, of course, I went to see Paris Saint-Germain, the top team in League One right now, also still making their run through the Champions League, and they played their hated rival Marseille in Les Classiques. Great experience. Love going to see some big time soccer events, but there was a player. He came up through the PSG youth system. I think played for PSG at some point. His mother acts as his agent, and she had apparently played a role in moving him to Marseille at some point. And every time this guy touched the ball, they were booing him. And then at some point, there were chants and songs and various things that would start up, and then you'd hear an announcement, and I'll see a message on the screen that was like, "Please stop these." These specific type of chants, but it's all in French, so I don't fucking know. I'm trying to ask the person sitting next to me about like exactly what's being said, and the answer is basically it's about this guy and his mother.
Oh.
And I was like, all right, I guess that's all I really need to know. But that's how they're gonna do you. If you're gonna roll up in here, you're gonna turn your back on PSG. You're gonna have your mother calling the shots for you. They're gonna let you hear it when you come back to Paris, my guy. And I had a great time, though, especially I was down there drinking those Parc des Princes Pacificos, partying with all the PSG fans beforehand. I went in there to one of these little spots to get me a beer to stand out on the street and drink before we went into the game. Just wanted one beer. They acted like I was crazy, Chad. The guy when I said one, and he made the symbol for two, and I was like, no, just one. And then he gestured at me as if to say, but you have two hands. Fair point.
Okay. Yeah. Well, here I am. I said we'd do it briefly, and we've put 13 minutes in the can here talking about our vacations. But as we like to say, it's a dilly-dally brand.
Yep.
And that's okay, because basically we got some odds and ends this week here on the podcast. Shawn Brady pretty much manhandled Leon Edwards over the weekend in the main event of this UFC fight night over there in London, eventually grabbing a fourth-round submission win. Obviously a good performance from Shawn Brady, but also one that maybe creates a little bit of chaos over there at the top of the welterweight division. So I think we're going to get into that here in a few minutes. First, though, Tom Aspinall, big Tommy Gas Hands, is feeling some renewed optimism for something. Everybody knows, right? But Tommy been chasing John Jones. He's showing up at the O2 with his little rubber ducky, right?
He
A
brought his
little
duck.
taunt. Yeah,
Mhm.
a little taunt directed at Jones, a little bit of fun, a little bit of bants, as he said this week to Ariel Helwani. I believe that's
Is that short
probably
for
a
banter?
British slang term for banter is
Mhm.
probably what that is. He meets with Hunter Campbell leading up to the UFC London. He says he feels really good about his spot in the company after that meeting. He says big announcements are on their way. And he has also, as we know, Ben, made it clear that he is not going to defend the interim heavyweight title again. But he also doesn't specifically say that these talks he had with Hunter Campbell were about John Jones. So my question is, what's really going on with Big Tommy Gas Hands?
If we miss an opportunity here to make this fight just I'm going to be so fucking mad. And I'm also just going to wonder what the hell we are even doing.
Yeah.
What are we doing? This is why you have titles and shit in the first place. It's to help you keep track of who the top person in the division is. Now, he had that one title with John Jones, but he was out for a little while, so you also wanted to be able to throw some gold on the poster, so you put one on Tommy Aspinall as well. Now, you've got two reminders who the top two people in the division are. You've got the physical form representing that thing. There ain't nothing to do except have those guys fight each other. So come on, that has to be what we do here, right? Especially, I understand if John Jones is trying to use it as a negotiating tool, trying to get some more money out of the UFC, they should absolutely pay him more money to go and do that fight. You're telling me John Jones, Jonathan Dwight Jones, who we've known for some time, we've got a chance to assess this man. You're going to tell me he will let Tom Aspinall walk around out there with his little rubber ducky, let him mock him on live television, holding up that ducky, making a face like he just saw a ghost? You're telling me John Jones is going to let that man get away with that? That I find difficult to believe.
You're right that we do have an established relationship with John Jones. We know what he's about at this point. Well, John Jones is down there becoming a part owner of Mike Perry's Dirty Boxing. That's what he was up to over the weekend. He was, going to whatever warehouse they have those in and watching Yoel Romero and Andrei Arlovsky dispatch some nobodies. That's what he was up to.
Do you think that's one of those things where you wake up in the morning hungover and you're like, oh shit, what did I get up to last night? Oh, damn it. Did I become a part owner of Mike Perry's Dirty Boxing last night? Not again.
I follow the Dirty Boxing on Instagram, and
of course you do.
It'll really get you excited for Dirty Boxing. And from a marketing perspective, they're doing good work over there. One thing that they put up this week leading up to the event was a video of Mike Perry where he was going to give you 5 reasons to attend a Dirty Boxing event.
Okay.
I believe he was wearing a blazer and a t-shirt at the time.
Naturally.
Reason number 1 was celebrities.
That's the first reason?
That was the first reason, is that you were going to get to hang with celebrities at the Dirty Box in the warehouse where they have the Dirty Boxing events. I'll be honest with you, I did not watch the other reasons. But
that's it, because you didn't need any other reasons. You saw that.
I was like, celebrities, book my ticket, because everybody knows I'm a clout chaser. I want to hang with celebrities.
Did he give any examples of what we mean by celebrities?
John Jones was there.
Okay. I mean, did he be like, here's who's going to be in the house?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't watch that. I didn't watch that far into it. I heard celebrities and I was good to go.
What I thought you were going to say is Mike Perry told us he was going to give us 5 reasons and he stopped after 2 or 3.
That would also be believable. Well, let's see here. I don't know. There's pictures of people in the audience at Dirty Boxing on their Instagram. I couldn't tell you who any of them are just by looking. I don't know.
Do they seem famous?
Maybe. I don't know, Ben. They're not famous enough for me to know who they are. So there. How about that? Okay. If it ain't John Jones for Big Tommy Gas Hands, it's Alex Pereira, right? That's, if you're thinking fun fight, if you're going to be coy with us, like Aspinall is being a little bit here on Ariel Helwani, it's got to be it's the only option, right? That's the only thing out there that I can think of, unless you bring out a giant egg like a WWF at the Survivor Series and Francis Ngannou pops out of it. Like, that's the only thing I can think of.
Well, if he's not going to defend, if we're not talking about we're doing another one of these bullshit defenses of the interim heavyweight title while the real one does other business, and if it wouldn't be John Jones, then you would have to think John Jones has taken a stance that he's not doing this fight, or at least not doing it for the money that the UFC wants him to do it for, would then be stripped of the title, and Tom Aspinall would be either promoted to regular champion or would be fighting somebody for the newly vacant title, which wouldn't it be a little weird to turn around and have Alex Pereira coming off a loss for the light heavyweight title, then go up and fight for the undisputed UFC heavyweight title? I mean, I say that as if logic still means anything in this sport. Because honestly, you put those two guys in a fight, people are still going to watch it. That's still going to do some big business for you and everything. But it would seem a little odd, right?
Yeah, I mean, he only had to win one, right? In between losing the middleweight championship and fighting for the light heavyweight title back in 2023. All he did was beat Yanni Blackjacks by split decision. And then they put him in the fight with Yuri P at UFC 295, and he won that one to become the champion. And that is in a division that is has just slightly a deeper talent pool than heavyweight. It's a talent puddle up there at heavyweight. So I don't know. You'd watch it, like you just said. You'd watch it no matter what.
Yeah,
even the winner gets the duck. You would watch it if that's what was at stake.
Then it becomes a college football rivalry game, essentially, where there's some otherwise meaningless trophy that we pass back and forth. But yeah, I mean, we just can't fuck this up. We can't. No. I'll be so mad, especially all the talk that the UFC likes to do about how they make the best fights. The best fight the best in the UFC. That's the difference between them. All the big fights, they make them happen. And here you have an opportunity, especially. Here we have an opportunity where there's two big fights that you can make this year. Two mega fights that stand way above everything else. Those two fights are John Jones versus Tom Aspinall and Islam Makhachev versus Ilya Topuria. And the way things are trending, the way some of the talk that you're hearing, it seems like a decent chance that they fuck around and make neither of them. And that probably the reason they would end up making neither of them would just be because they would only make a boatload of money off of them and not a fuckload of money off of them. It would be super profitable, a lot of money to go around for everybody, but they don't ever want to share any more of the money than they absolutely have to with the fighters, the people anyone actually pays to fucking see. And then you would miss those opportunities because of that. And that would be so depressing as a state of where we are in this sport,
UFC's track record making those super fights not great.
No,
I have to say, not great. Remember, you're listening to the Co-Main Event podcast proper. This show drops every Tuesday afternoon for free in your timelines and your podcast libraries. But if you want even more of the Co-Main Event, you can find Ben Folks and myself all week over on Patreon. Hit us up at patreon.com/co-main event and get loads of extra audio and video content, as well as access to our official Discord message board where they're talking fights and a lot of other stuff literally all the time. Hit us up at patreon.com/co-main event. We've got a bunch of handy tiers of patronage. Join the team. Patreon.com/co-main event. Another great way to support the show is by going to our website, co-mainevent.com, and checking out our merchandise shop. We got t-shirts, hats, hoodies. We got everything. Stop by and pick up the best-selling Daddest Man on the Planet coffee mug while we can keep them in stock. We got Dundasso t-shirts over there. We got Bobby Nux t-shirts. We got Volcomania t-shirts. Like I said, we got it all. Just go to the website, co-mainevent.com, and click the link at the top of the page that says shop. Ben, spoiler alert. Don't tell anyone this.
Okay. Just between me and you.
Keep this on the DL between friends, between me and you. We're about to drop Daddest Man on the Planet t-shirts.
What?
Yeah, changing the whole fucking game. Daddest Man on the Planet t-shirts about to drop over there at the CME shop. Don't say where you heard it. I ain't saying no names. You didn't hear it from me.
That's big. I'm gonna have a hard time keeping that to myself. I'm telling you that right now.
It's about to go down. As always, we're partnering with our guy, Johnny Ashcroft, on the shop. He is a brand and design guy from Portland, Oregon. We can't recommend him highly enough for all your design needs. Hit him up at studiosuperconductor.com or on Instagram at studiosuperconductor. Right now, like we always do about this time, let's do a little bit of listener mail.
Listener mail.
First piece of listener mail this week comes to us from Jeff of Atlanta. He writes, you guys take 1 week off and Conor fucking McGregor ends up in the White House. What happens if you need to take another week off? Shawn Strickland to the UN?
Don't act like that's not shockingly plausible.
I don't think you guys realize the wall of sanity you guard on a week-to-week basis in the MMA world. Insanity like this is waiting patiently for you to get distracted. We want you on that wall. We need you on that wall. Ben, not only did Conor McGregor, court-adjudicated rapist, show up at the White House to speak behind the podium where the other court-adjudicated rapist typically speaks, at the White House. Later on, same week, he announced his candidacy for the presidency of Ireland.
Yeah, why not, right?
Perhaps, I'm not going to say the biggest drawback of our current situation, because who's to say what that is? One of the biggest, perhaps, dangers of the current situation is now fucking anybody can be president. Literally anybody, any jerk off the street, Conor McGregor, whoever, they might as well just run for president, because who knows, man, they might win.
Yeah, I do think that there are still some other countries out there that are not as completely insane as we are, and I think that Ireland is probably one of those countries. Especially, I was encouraged by the strong response that we've seen to Conor McGregor from Ireland, not only just recently, but in the last couple of years, you've seen that they recognize who this guy is and they don't like it. And they are mad about it because they had embraced him and they feel like he's an embarrassment now, which he is. And we heard from our man on the scene about him getting booed at the Limp Bizkit concert in Dublin after he was so proud to tell everybody that he was going to be going there. And then he shows up here, and I saw a lot of response from from Irish politicians, people in the Irish media, basically being like, shut up, don't go out there acting like you're speaking for us when you talk about how Ireland has a huge problem with immigration. We don't feel that way, and we think you are an asshole. And the big homie Vince Mancini wrote something for GQ this week that it really resonated with me, and I assume with a lot of people in the CME listening audience, because he was just like, it is painful to see something a sport that you love, that you've watched for a long time, and to see it taken over by like the worst people, and to see them all kind of just teaming up to take it over together and insulate each other from any sort of criticism, really. And how, we always knew that there was some aspects of being an MMA fan and watching the UFC all the goddamn time that were going to be embarrassing, but Jesus Christ, we didn't think it was going to be like this. And then you're watching Conor McGregor show up at the White House where it's like, all right, so like you said, it's just a couple of adjudicated rapists having a good time, chopping it up together in the goddamn White House. And you feel like we've slipped through a fun house mirror of sorts. And of all that, why does it have to be our sport, our beloved sport, which we already knew was a ridiculous carnival in some ways, and then somehow it found a way to get more embarrassing?
I have to give it up to Jesse Young over there at CNN for doing a good job in this story, capturing who Conor McGregor has become, because you don't always see this over there in the lamestream media, right? A lot of times the big dogs come over, they try to write an MMA story, and you're like, this person has no fucking idea what they're talking about. Jesse Young has a lot of good descriptors of McGregor in here. She writes, McGregor, who in recent years has emerged as a figurehead for the far right in Ireland, said on social media that he would run for president to oppose a long-awaited new European Union migration pact aimed at sharing the burden of processing asylum claims more evenly across the bloc. Once the face of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Dublin-born McGregor was the first fighter to hold 2 UFC belts simultaneously and, according to Forbes, was the world's highest-paid sports star in 2021. Okay, obviously that's not true.
Well, that requires an asterisk, because it was not sports that he was being paid for. So even if that part was true, you're talking about the sale of the whiskey company.
Despite several rumored comebacks, he hasn't fought in the UFC since back-to-back defeats 4 years ago and has become a hugely controversial figure in Ireland, dogged by accusations of sexual assault, which he has denied. And then there's a couple paragraphs about how he lost the civil suit. And then it says, in recent years, McGregor has also turned his attention to sparring with people on social media. Political analysts and far-right experts have told CNN that McGregor's unique brand of Irish patriotism that won him supporters as a fighter has mutated into a strand of far-right Irish nationalism. So yeah, I read that and I was like, you know what? Yeah, that is what has befallen Conor McGregor over the last handful of years.
By the way, if we want to talk about the scourge of people from other countries coming to the United States and committing crimes, I can point you in the direction of one. He's on video doing it. More than one crime, in fact, he is on video doing in this country. So if that's what we're upset about, let's take a look at that guy.
Next question this week comes to us from @PissedOffLawyer. He writes, is it me or is the light heavyweight division the most interesting it's been since Jones, Cormier, and Gustafsson were at the top? Pereira will seemingly get a chance to win his title back from Ankalaev soon. Ulberg just emerged as a legitimate fresh-faced contender. Blachowicz showed he can still hang with the elite. Yuri, one of the most exciting fighters in the sport, is coming off a win. Roundtree versus Hill and Reyes versus Krylov will each put a guy in the title conversation. Am I being overly optimistic about 205?
You know what?
I will say this. I will say this. This happens, Jones leaves, Pereira comes up. He's a pretty good star for the UFC. He loses his title. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen between him and Magomed Ankalaev. You lose these kind of like central figures, and a lot of times what you get is that these other who had been bit part players in the division emerge, right? And that's what's happening here at light heavyweight. And I think Pissed Off Lawyer makes a good point here that now we have a potentially more parody-driven scenario where you've got these guys that previously had been kind of under the radar might come up here and seize the mantle, seize our attention, all that other stuff. I will say this, though. At the moment, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of sizzle, right? Beyond Alex Pereira and potentially Magomed Ankalaev. And as we talked about 2 weeks ago on our last episode of this show, ain't no sizzle around Magomed Ankalaev right now. So like you talk about Carlos or Ulberg and Yanni Blackjacks last weekend. Ulberg did win. I'm not sure it was a great fight. It was a close fight. It probably could have gone either way. But I don't think anybody's going to be sitting here at the end of the year being like, oh, we need to put together Magomed Ankalaev versus Carlos Ulberg, right? So you potentially have an interesting situation happening, but someone's going to have to come up with a little something to get our attention and get our interest.
When he started out saying, is it me or is light heavyweight division the most interesting it's been? My first reaction was, is it though? But when he makes the case, he kind of talks me into it. I mean, again, he is the lawyer part of Pissed Off Lawyer maybe suggests that he's pretty good at arguing and winning you over to his side. But especially if we're talking about interesting, because as you said, interesting in this case is because of it being more competitive, because of it feeling like almost anybody in that top 5 or 6 could make a run and who knows, end up as the champion, which we go through these cycles. When we have a dominant champion, we start to get bored with it. We start to just feel like there's nothing really going on in this division anymore. We're getting into reruns, or we're getting into challengers who haven't really made a case yet, but shit, somebody has to fight for the title. We definitely got there with John Jones. And then when he's gone, suddenly it's chaos. Everybody gets to have a cup of coffee with the belt. Then you get a new champion for a little while, and Alex Pereira that we all got very excited about. And now it feels like we're entering maybe another period where everything is kind of in flux. But that does make for some interesting stuff, because you do see at least you have some guys who are young and on the way up. And that has not always been the case at light heavyweight. We sometimes looked at it and been like, shit, is this just going to turn into another heavyweight division where there aren't a ton of really good athletes in this, and it's a shallow pool to choose from? And now you're seeing some signs like, okay, there are some interesting matchups you can make. There's some fun fights that you could put together. Yanni Blackchecks has got to be feeling a little bit like he's the old dog who keeps getting fucked in this scenario. So I sympathize with him a little bit. But yeah, there is some new interest, some new stuff it seems happening at light heavyweight. And so I appreciate Pissed Off Lawyer bringing it to our attention.
Next question this week comes to us from the Repo Man. And then they note, parenthetically, the 90s WWE character, not the 1984 cult classic film.
Yeah, so it's the that tells you you're dealing with the character and not the film. Because the film is just Repo Man.
Yeah, correct. And the people are putting some thought into this, which I like. Ilia Topuria will be changing his nickname from El Matador to The Legend for his lightweight run. Are we getting ahead of ourselves here? Could the vibes be off? What does the CME consulting firm have to say about this?
I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
And see, I made this point just a couple weeks ago. There was a guy fighting on one of the Fight Night events where he's on the undercard and his nickname was The Legend. And I'm just like, you don't get to call yourself that. We call you that. You don't get to tell us that you're a legend. Now, Ilia Topuria has a better claim to something like that, a status like that than this dude did. But still, I will say the El Matador never felt like a great nickname. It always felt like kind of the first thing somebody would think of. Oh, we got a fighter coming out of Spain. All right. What do we know about Spain? Bullfighting. He's a matador. All right, there we go. And we just sort of slapped it on him and we went. And it never felt as unique as Ilia Topuria as a fighter and as the position he occupies in the sport. It didn't feel like it really matched him, or like you could easily just forget that it was his nickname. It's like if you had a character in a video game where one of the fighters in the video game is from Spain, he's the Matador. Like that's what it felt like. So it's not that I mind a nickname change, but to call yourself the Legend right as you're going up in weight and maybe facing some tough tasks, maybe facing some of those reminders of that we have these weight classes for a reason. We've seen that shit happen before. It does seem like you are tempting the MMA gods a little bit.
It does seem like awkward timing, right? We maybe should have gone with the Legend before we announced we were going up to lightweight. Even for Ilia Topuria, going with the Legend seems presumptuous to me because it's still got some work to do there. Not that your nickname, can't be over the top. Yeah. It's kind of supposed to be, but at the same time, the Legend, I don't know. It also leads us, if things went really, really bad for Ilia Topuria, then suddenly we would be like, the Legend of Ilia Topuria is a cautionary tale, right?
Yeah. See, these are the headlines you got to think about when you're changing your nickname.
Could turn out to be as forgettable as, say, the Repo Man. Just saying.
Ooh.
All right, last question this week comes to us from Dean Draper, your boy from across the pond, who writes, if you wanted to get someone into the UFC to share your passion for it, how would you pitch it today? Like you dudes, I'm of a certain age, so I first discovered it in a bar in Greece sometime in the late 90s that had UFCs 1, 2, and 3 playing on a loop the whole week I was there, and it obviously blew my fucking mind to walk in on that with zero prior knowledge of its existence. Okay. Let's just pause a moment to talk about how awesome that is.
Yeah. So, for one thing, you're telling us like that you're in Greece and the bar had it playing on a loop the whole week you were there, suggesting you were in the bar all week.
Enough to watch UFCs 1, 2, and 3.
It does create an interesting scenario for us to imagine.
Yeah.
They see you walk in, they go, oh, here comes this asshole here to sit down and watch 4 hours of the UFC.
I think that's the best way that I've heard of anyone finding out about the UFC, to be in a bar in Greece in the late 90s and just look up and there it is on the TV screen. He goes on. So that was a pretty easy pitch to friends. Quote, you've got to see this wild as fuck, no rules fighting type shit. And even in the following years, there were big stars on big cards. So again, an easy sell. But today, I don't think I'd even bother trying to get anyone into it. Hardly watch it myself anymore. Just some of the big cards or the odd main event of a shite card. Never miss a co-main event episode, though. Thanks, Dean. Seems to like the discussion more than the product now, which is weird. I know, but that's where I am. It's weird. I know, but that's where I am, he says. You and I have discussed this frequently, that unfortunately this is the tenor of the most emails that we get.
Yep.
The majority, or the topic that comes in more often for emails to this podcast are, I used to really like this thing and now I don't really like it anymore, but for whatever reason I'm still listening to you jerks talk about it. And as we have stated, that is not a great sign for the longevity of the brand, of anyone's brand in this sport. But again, the UFC, they don't care, man, because they have, as Ari Emanuel likes to say, taken the lumpiness out of the business to the extent that they are just making more money than ever, no matter how many fans they are hemorrhaging. And are the numbers great? We've heard maybe not. We've heard that there is an impending split on the docket, potentially, between the UFC and ESPN, and some of the reasons why are that the UFC is not producing great numbers, particularly when it comes to pay-per-view. Of course, all that at this point is rumor and innuendo because we don't know those numbers anymore. But have you ever noticed, not to beat around the bush here more than we need to before we answer the exact question, have you ever noticed the UFC's relationships don't end well?
Nope, never.
Never had one. We went from Spike TV to Spuke TV.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? We went to Fox, where at the end of it, everybody was doing their best to try to act like everything was fine and we were all still friends. But those of us who actually worked in the industry at the time heard every which way they don't like each other, that this shit is fucked and the UFC is bailing. Now we got the ESPN, where they've been falling all over themselves for the lifetime of this deal, talking about how awesome it is. Everyone has, even the ESPN people. I remember when we worked for The Athletic, I interviewed one of the big wigs at ESPN. I can't remember who he was, as a live sports guy, whatever, executive type. He praised the UFC more effusively than he even needed to. So much that when we were talking on the phone, I was like, this is weird how much this guy is praising the UFC. Like, he could just say we love it and it's great, but he is going overboard on this shit. They've always been so effusive about the UFC, and the UFC has always been so complimentary about ESPN. And now we're starting to hear maybe the split, if there is one, is poised to be a little bit more acrimonious than we might be led to believe.
You're right that this has been a pattern for the UFC, and honestly, a pattern kind of for Dana White. Another one of those things that shows you there's a lot of personality similarities between Dana White and Donald Trump. You're like, is this why these guys are friends? And that when you're on my side and you're making me money, you're a great guy. Nothing but good things to say about you. The second one of those things might not be true anymore, you are bullshit and we're always bullshit and you were never my friend. That's just been the MO for years and years and years. Now, this story that came out recently was at the New York Post, New York Daily News. It was one of those, right, where it was just like, here, both sides are mad at each other. And it kind of, you see that at this point where we are in the negotiating process for a new rights deal. Like mid-January, the exclusive negotiating period started. I think it was 90 days. So we're around the end of that now. We're getting to the end of it pretty soon. And suddenly everybody's talking to some media about how they are upset or disappointed with the other side in this deal. It seems like we're trying to do negotiating through that. We're trying to bring each other down a little bit from where our current asking points are. And on the UFC side, we're furious about the technical issues on ESPN Plus and things that have plagued recent pay-per-view broadcasts, which to those of us who've been paying attention this whole time, these are not new issues. Not new issues at all that you're having with ESPN Plus on the technical side. I agree that they're there. Shit, all these people talk about how difficult it is to order the pay-per-view. You go on there and try to give ESPN Plus your money, and they will make it tough on you. And then if you do manage to order it and watch the shit, they might show you some Ben Roethlisberger slides from years ago. And you're just like, what the fuck is how are you the worldwide leader in sports? How is this happening over there? I was trying to catch up on these fights, trying to watch Shawn Brady and Leon Edwards, and it was doing the thing to me over and over again where it's just like, you should consider signing up for ESPN Plus membership. And I'm like, I have one. I can see at the top of the screen that I'm logged in. And they're like, do you need some help? Click on this link. And then it takes you to like the FAQ section for ESPN bets or whatever. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on over there? And I can see but that's not a new issue. That's been going on the entire time they've been on ESPN Plus. So for the UFC to be suddenly enraged about this now just shows you that it's a negotiating tactic. And then on the other side, ESPN being like, we're disappointed with the pay-per-view numbers that we think are down, and we blame the UFC, whether it's for putting together weak cards. The UFC has said it in the past. They think ESPN Plus has raised the price too quickly. The UFC has, for all its talk occasionally about cracking down on piracy, has done nothing significant to stop piracy. So I'm sure that hurts pay-per-view sales too. There are reasons for both of them to be mad at each other. The fact that they're airing them now suggests that it's something going on with the negotiations. Again, I say probably the most likely scenario is that we see the UFC product get split up in the rights deals, and part of it ends up on Netflix. I realized we got onto this after Dean Draper was asking us about how would you get someone into the UFC? How would you share your passion for it now? My first question to myself is, would I? Like, it'd be like, I feel like I've been a drug addict for years. Am I trying to get somebody else in on it? Like if you walk in on me watching the UFC now, I'm like that scene from Walk Hard where, he keeps walking in on them doing drugs and you're just like, you don't want no part of this shit. Like that's kind of how I feel toward it now. If I were to get somebody into it, I would be like, watch the fights, enjoy it, learn nothing about these people, any of them. Just enjoy it on fight night. That's your best hope.
Yeah, and I think that the part of that pitch would never be at this point, you got to watch all this stuff, right? It would be more of like a mainstream sports pitch, right? Nobody who tries to get you into the NFL or baseball or hockey is like, you got to watch every game, right? You're going to love hockey. You got to watch every game by every team. Like nobody's saying that. And it's the same thing with the UFC right now. You got to get your friends to come over for the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably about it. And then tell them up front, never find out anything about any of these people that you like. If you have a favorite, just don't follow them on social media. Don't read the news about
dare
them.
Type their name into Google. Don't even do it.
You'll be lucky if they don't talk about it right there on the UFC broadcast.
If you need to look at their record, don't go to Wikipedia because there's too great a risk that you'll see like controversies and arrests sections. Go to Tapology. Google their name and Tapology, and that's it.
All right, that's going to do it for listener mail this week. If you have a question, comment, or concern that you would like to air to the podcast in future weeks, you know how to do it. Go to the website, comainevent.com, and click the link at the top right-hand corner of the screen that says email the podcast. That'll get you in touch with us. We're going to talk about Shawn Brady's win over Leon Edwards coming up right after this. Well, Ben, it's the old cliche. Styles make fights, and Leon Edwards, your former welterweight champion, could simply not stop Shawn Brady from taking him down in this fight, and eventually gets choked out roughly 2 minutes into the fourth round. A big win for Shawn Brady, potentially a big loss for Leon Edwards. But perhaps, as I said at the top of the show, creates a little bit of awkwardness at the top of the division, because you will note in the wake of this, Shawn Brady has flown up 4 spots in the UFC's official rankings to number 1. He is currently rated the number 1 contender to Bilal Muhammad. He is ranked above that boy good, Shavkat Rakhmonov.
That ain't right.
He is ranked above Jack Della Maddalena, who's poised to get the next title shot. And the most awkward thing about it is that Shawn Brady's one career loss is to Bilal Muhammad, and it doesn't feel like it happened that long ago. It was at UFC 280, which actually was in October of 2022. So, a few years at this point. He's put together 3 wins in a row since then: Kelvin Gastelum, Gilbert Burns, and Leon Edwards. But at the same time, when you say Shawn Brady to me, the thing that I think, at least prior to Saturday, was not, big back-to-back wins over Gilbert Burns and Kelvin Gastelum. That's not what I thought. The thing that I thought when you mentioned Shawn Brady to me was he already lost to Bilal Muhammad by fairly one-sided TKO.
Right. But also, I will say that was a couple of years ago at this point, and Shawn Brady was a rocket, and Bilal Muhammad stopped the hype train. But then, he picked himself back up, won the fights. He does not deserve to be above Shavkat, that boy Good Rakhmonov. That we all recognize is the top contender, and it's only because he is injured, as he will remind us, that he is not able to be the next person fighting for the title. But when he is healthy, he absolutely should be the next person fighting for the title. This is the danger, though. If you're out a little bit, we start to forget about you. Somebody else has a good performance. They come in there and they win. Here's what this made me think of, though, watching this fight, once I finally got ESPN Plus to work for me, is sometimes you see like these sequence of events that make you go back and question your prior assumptions about some of the other fighters in good and bad ways. Because when you see Leon Edwards get absolutely tooled up by Shawn Brady, and then you think the only person to beat Shawn Brady is Bilal Muhammad, doesn't a part of you go, maybe Bilal Muhammad is fucking good? People don't want to admit that because they don't like him or they feel like he's cringy or whatever. Like, people have sort of decided that they don't think of, even though he's a champion, that they don't want to think of Bilal Muhammad as the best guy in the division. And yet Shawn Brady looked pretty fucking good and Bilal Muhammad beat his ass. And so shit, like, maybe you do have to circle back and reckon with yourself that Bilal Muhammad is just fucking good. But then also, when you see these 2 losses in a row for Leon Edwards, I'm sure there are people out there making the opposite claim where they're just like, Leon Edwards is washed. Leon Edwards had his time, and now he is in the precipitous decline phase that some fighters get into. And lost to Bilal Muhammad, lost to Shawn Brady, shows that he done fell off. And that's what you were seeing. Not necessarily that these guys, either of them, are world beaters, just that Leon Edwards either wasn't as good as we thought, or that peak did not last very long.
Leon Edwards also had a bit of a tricky stylistic adjustment to make here. He was supposed to be Jackie Flatnose. He was supposed to fight Jack Della Maddalena at this event. Of course, we know he got pulled out to go fight Bilal Muhammad for the title. And so you had Shawn Brady sub in, not necessarily as a super late replacement, but like toward the end of February, they put Shawn Brady into this fight. And so, roughly a month later or so, you got to get in there with a grappler when maybe you're expecting to have a little bit more of a striking based fight against Jack Della Maddalena. But I mostly agree with you. I feel like it's a loss that hurts Leon Edwards. I think hurts our view of him a little bit.
Especially because he just didn't ever look like he going,
Yeah.
Right away, it just seemed like Shawn Brady was on him, was in his face. Bilal's on Twitter talking about like, oh, what time is it? What's the issue now? What is it too early, too late? Like, poking at him, all that kind of shit. And you're just kind of like, yeah, he does not. You start to think about what you've seen of him in the past, like even that Kamaru Usman fight that he came back and won with the headshot dead. He was looking a little despondent, and that one, like, that speech became a famous moment in MMA where his coach is like, stop feeling sorry for yourself, and he gets off the stool and he wins it. But the reason he had to give that speech is because he was looking kind of like that, looking kind of flat in that fight as well. And so because at this point you start to think like, it seems like maybe a troubling thing that sometimes he just can't get going.
Shawn Brady not squashing the beef. after
No.
this one was over. They had some words leading up to the fight. There was a little bit of animosity there. They were mostly respectful to each other, but you could tell there was a little bit of animosity there. After it's over, Shawn Brady essentially charges Leon Edwards and his team of acting, quote, corny as shit in the cage after it was over. He's like, I went up to him and said, yo, man, you're a great champion. He just kind of brushed me off. Obviously, he's upset, but even his whole team, they were corny as shit too. So it was just whack. My coaches, my team didn't go over there. Like, fuck that. We're not saying shit to these dudes. Even before they raised my hand, I tried to touch him behind the referee, Jason Herzog, and he's just salty. Then seeing all this shit he was saying about me throughout the week, I wish I was even fucking meaner to this dude. You know.
You know what though? Give Shawn Brady the credit because he did a great job just sort of out grappling, out wrestling Leon Edwards the whole time there. And then when he gets that finish, he's on top there and he sees that opportunity. He immediately loops the arm around for the guillotine from the top position. And knowing, you've seen a lot of people where there are opportunities, especially for guillotines from these kind of positions, that if you were doing no-gi grappling, sure, you could get a lot more of these. But when you get the gloves in the way, it creates that obstacle. And he knows, like, he's sort of posting out with one hand. And so he did a really smooth job of looping that hand in and then sort of locking it behind his hip until he could get the opportunity to reach over with the other hand and tighten it up. And it was just like, that's some slick shit right there. You gotta be impressed with that guy. And if you told me that we were headed for a potential rematch between Shawn Brady and Bilal Muhammad at some point down the road, like, I could get into it. I just need to see Shaw cut that boy good first.
A little awkward, I thought, to have on the call a former training partner or a current training partner. It always happens,
Yeah.
I like Paul Felder. I think he mostly does a good job, but this one, it's always a little awkward to hear them talking about their guy when they're up there having their fight.
Yeah, that is. And it's a thing that you can tell these are some of the issues you get into when the UFC just selects their own broadcast team because they don't ever care about any sort of conflict like that.
All right, that's going to do it this week for the Co-Main Event podcast. Thanks to everybody for listening. Just a reminder, we are over on Patreon all week. We'll have the live chat tomorrow where we spend 60 minutes taking all of your questions, or at least as many as we can fit in during an hour and change. We got Thursday's episode of Doing the Damn Thing, where we generally take a break from MMA and talk about other topics, other stuff going on in the world we think you might be interested in. And then, of course, Friday's Power Hour, another curated hour of mixed martial arts talk to get you ready for whatever is coming up this weekend, which in this case is Brandon Moreno versus Steve Erceg down there in Mexico City. The UFC going from London to Mexico City for these fight nights. This one, not a terrible card. Again, some more people that you might recognize than your average UFC fight night card, but that's what you got. Brandon Moreno, Steve Erceg down there in Mexico City. So if I had to guess, we'll probably be talking about that come Friday. As for right now, thanks everybody for listening. We appreciate the support. We are done. We are through. We are out.
We didn't even get a chance to talk about how Joe Rogan would rather go to Russia than Canada.
I know. He'd rather go to Russia than Canada, which I was wondering about that. Is this a reflection of the current political moment, or does Joe Rogan have a reason why maybe he can't go to Canada?
I mean, you know what? My reaction, Joe Rogan would rather go to Russia than Canada, then go. Go. Come on. I'm sure they'd love to have you, man. Canada's a wonderful country. I don't think they're really sitting around being like, oh, but Joe Rogan doesn't want to come here. They're doing all right.
Yeah, they really are.